Hey there, I'm the storyteller from Nightmare at 3 a.m., and I'm here to keep you company tonight. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. When you're ready, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and relax. The story is about to begin. I've always believed that camping alone is the best way to know if you can stand your own company. My father used to say the forest doesn't answer. It reflects. Maybe that's why, on a random Friday in September, I chose the old dry stone trail for a weekend of solitude. The place wasn't well known. A state reserve in the backlands of Minas Gerais, closed to the public since a landslide in 2009. At the entrance, a moss-covered sign still read, "Risk of geological instability." I ignored it. I carried a light tent, dehydrated food, and my old Garmin GPS that somehow still worked. The first few kilometers were easy. Then the trail got uneven. The brush closed in. The vegetation felt older, like time passed more slowly here. By late afternoon, I reached a clearing. The ground was dry, brittle under my boots. In the center, a stack of stones, like a handmade marker. Next to it, cold ashes, the remains of a recent fire. But no footprints, no sound. I pitched my tent near the marker. As dusk fell, I ate instant noodles with jerky and took a sip of cachaça. My grandfather used to say it was for scaring off the nameless things. That night, I heard footsteps. Not heavy, light, like someone walking barefoot on the dry leaves. I stepped out with my flashlight. Nothing. But when I returned, one of the stones had been flipped. The largest one, the exposed side, had what looked like a scratch or a claw mark. I tried to rationalize it, maybe an animal, an armadillo, a wild boar, but it didn't add up. No noise, no dragging, just that flipped stone and total silence. I slept with my knife open inside the sleeping bag. Next morning, the stone was back in place, on its own. No animal could have done it with that kind of precision. I walked in circles, looking for footprints, just mine. Around the camp, though, I noticed something worse. No sound, none, no birds, no bugs, no wind. Like I was inside a giant glass dome. As Susan Sontag said, all terror is a form of knowledge. I followed that thought. I found a barely visible trail heading out of the clearing. Maybe it led to higher ground where I could try to get cell signal. About a kilometer away according to the GPS. Along the way, I spotted scraps of fabric tangled in branches, gray, weathered cloth, and then, almost buried, an old backpack. Inside, a soaked notebook with smeared pages. Only one sentence on the cover was still legible. "He doesn't want you to look. He wants you to listen." I ran back. Something told me I'd opened a door. The stone pile was completely undone. I hadn't been gone more than an hour. As I was resetting the camp, I heard it for the first time, an echo, but not mine. It sounded like someone calling my name from a distance in a tone that wasn't hostile, just urgent, almost intimate. The nickname only my mother used, Tutu. She died in 2011. The voice came from the south, from the trail, from nowhere. I heard it 3 more times, always the same, always that voice. I didn't answer, just sat, shaking, inside the tent, trying to remember if I'd ever told anyone that name. Maybe it wasn't a person, maybe it was the forest throwing my sounds back at me, but why now? That night, no moon, no warmth. I didn't sleep, just waited. knife in hand. Around 3 a.m., something whispered my name directly into my ear, but I was alone in the tent. With the zipper shut, I leapt out. Nothing. But in the place where the stone pile used to be, there was something new. A small, cracked mirror. It was mine. It had been inside my backpack. I decided to leave before sunrise. I walked for hours, ignoring the pain in my legs, till I saw the car. When I looked back, I swear I saw a silhouette standing in the clearing, small, still, not threatening, just there. Since then, I haven't been able to camp alone again. Sometimes I hear the echo of my name at night, and sometimes I answer without meaning to. Maybe the mistake was stopping, or thinking silence is neutral. Like my father used to say, the forest doesn't judge, but it remembers. This happened in 2021. I was 36. I'd left the military a few years prior after spending most of my 20s working signal units and field logistics. After that, I moved out to Oregon and started freelancing, mostly doing maintenance and recovery work on old radio equipment and off-grid antenna setups. There's an area about 2 hours west of Klamath Falls. Not on any public trail maps. Locals call it the Gray Line, supposedly because a military communications site was active there decades ago and then abandoned after a fire. My work rarely takes me that deep into nowhere, but one of my regular clients called me about a dead frequency that had started broadcasting static, along with some strange audio, a pattern, a loop. He sent me a clip. I played it back a dozen times before I said yes. It sounded like code, and faintly, like a voice whispering through water. I packed 2 days of food, camp gear, my tools, a sidearm. Got there early afternoon and left my truck near a dried-out forest road. The hike in took about 3 hours. Thick woods, no signal, no sign of other people. Eventually, I reached what was left of the station, a square concrete building with a rusted metal door half buried in ivy and dirt. There were no windows, just one entrance and a row of old utility poles running out into the trees. Most were snapped or leaning. I pitched my tent maybe 20 feet from the building between 2 of the remaining poles. Everything was quiet, not peaceful, just empty. As the sun went down, the air felt heavier. I set up my receiver to monitor the band and got static at first. Then about an hour after dark, the loop started. It wasn't digital. It sounded like someone pressing a mic button manually. 3 short bursts, a pause, then 2 longer ones, then silence. Then it repeated, over and over. I wrote it down, thinking maybe it was Morse. It wasn't. I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2 a.m., I heard something inside the station, like someone dragging something metallic across the floor. Then it stopped. I didn't move. I didn't go check. I just sat in my tent, staring at the dark until sunrise. The next morning, I forced myself to open the building. The door creaked hard. Inside, there was a single old desk and a shattered radio console, all covered in dust, except the floor. There were boot prints in the dust. One set, not mine, no gear, no sleeping bag, no food wrappers, just those tracks. I worked for the next few hours checking lines and running diagnostics. Everything looked dead. The transmission loop had stopped. I packed up faster than I ever had before, but when I reached my tent, the zipper was open. My backpack had been unbuckled. Nothing was missing, just touched, moved. On top of the pack was a small object I hadn't brought with me, an old earpiece, military issue, just like the ones we used in Iraq. And one last thing, the notebook I'd used to log the signal. One page was torn out, not ripped, neatly cut. I left that afternoon. The woods felt tighter on the way out. The trail I came in on looked different, older somehow. No one followed me, no one called. But when I got home, there was an envelope in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was the missing page from my notebook. The code I'd written down had been rewritten. Same pattern, same spacing, but underneath, in clean block letters, someone had written, "Stay off this frequency." I still work with signal tech, but I don't go into the woods alone anymore, and I don't touch old channels when they come back to life. This was in late 2020. I had just lost my younger brother. It wasn't sudden. Cancer never is. But that didn't make anything easier. I took time off, cut ties with most people I knew, and went north. My plan was simple. Drive out to Oregon and spend some time hiking and camping near Still Creek, a place we'd talked about visiting when we were kids, but never did. It's a lesser-known part of Mount Hood National Forest. Quiet, no marked trails where I went, just narrow access roads and old ranger paths. I had a basic setup in my SUV, sleeping platform, cooking gear, everything I needed. The plan was to spend 3 nights out there, alone. The first night was fine, cold, quiet. The sound of the creek helped me sleep. On the second day, I hiked deep into the woods, no real destination. Just walked, took some pictures, tried to feel something. I never saw anyone, not once. But later that evening, when I got back to my campsite, something felt off. Nothing was missing. But the rear passenger door, the one I never used, was unlocked. I was sure I'd locked all the doors when I left. I told myself I must have forgotten. Still, I barely slept that night. Every crack in the trees, every branch shifting in the wind, felt closer than it should have. I kept the windows slightly cracked for airflow. At one point around 2 a.m., I swore I heard breathing outside, slow, steady, just behind the driver's side. I didn't look. I just stayed still, holding my breath, counting in my head. Eventually, it stopped, or I passed out from exhaustion. I don't know. The next morning, I walked the perimeter, found nothing, but on the back window of the SUV, someone had wiped a single line across the dust. Not a word, just a horizontal streak, like a finger drawn from left to right. Deliberate, meant to be seen. I planned to leave that day, but something made me stay. Some part of me, maybe the broken one, didn't want to run just because of one bad night. So I stayed. One more. I spent most of that day walking further up the creek, trying to keep my mind busy. I didn't want to think about the window or the breathing. I told myself it was just wildlife, or maybe even my own stress playing tricks. But when I came back that evening, there was no mistaking it anymore. Someone had been inside the car. Nothing was stolen again. But a cooler had been opened, and one of the protein bars was sitting on the driver's seat, not eaten, just placed there, like a note. That's when I noticed the floor mat had been flipped, the side I never even stepped on, and the glove box, slightly ajar. I didn't scream, I didn't panic. I just stood there trying to figure out what kind of person does that. Breaks in, moves a few things, then leaves quietly, leaves something behind. I should have driven off, I know that, but I froze. It was getting dark fast, and I didn't want to navigate those roads at night, so I got in, locked every door, and just sat in the driver's seat, keys in the ignition, windows up. The woods went dead quiet. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed fully dressed, hand on the bear spray, staring at the windshield. At 1:42 a.m., something tapped on the rear window. Not hard, just one tap. I didn't move. Then again, another tap, higher up this time. Then, silence. I waited an hour before I had the courage to look. Nothing was there. But when the sun started to rise, I stepped outside and saw it clearly. The protein bar was gone, and in its place, on the hood of the car, was a small item I hadn't seen in years. A child's ring, plastic, pink, the kind you get from a toy vending machine. The same kind my brother used to buy me as a joke when we were kids. I hadn't packed it. I hadn't seen it in over a decade. I left the site in silence. Never filed a report. I just drove until I hit pavement again, and then another hour past that. I didn't even stop to eat. Sometimes I still wonder if there really was someone out there, or if grief does things to people when they're isolated and trying not to drown in it. But I know I didn't imagine the bar, or the breathing, or that ring, and I haven't gone back to Still Creek since. This was in October of 2022. I hadn't been back to the mountains since the accident. Back then I worked volunteer SAR, search and rescue, mostly in the Carolinas. The kind of work that doesn't make headlines, but sticks with you. We responded to lost hikers, missing teens, the occasional suicide watch. My last call-out ended badly. We'd tracked a missing woman up through the ridge above Salt Gap. Foggy, muddy terrain. I was partnered with Ben. Good guy, family man. We split up just for 20 minutes to follow two divergent boot prints. I found a girl. Ben never came back. They ruled it a fall, an accident. But I knew the trail he took, and it wasn't unstable. I left 6 months later, never gave them a reason. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing static at night, like his radio was still keyed open. So in 2022, I went back, not to Salt Gap, but close, up an old trail we used to call Tower Trail. It's not on any current maps, but if you follow the old fire roads long enough, you reach an abandoned Forest Service lookout tower, steel and wood, 3 stories high. No one goes up there anymore. I packed light, 2 nights worth of gear. No cell reception out there, just a radio receiver and a topo map. I told myself I just wanted to see it again, face the memory, put things to rest. The trail was tougher than I remembered, a lot more overgrown. Fog clung to the low trees. The only sound was my own boots and a breath. By the time I reached the tower, the sun was gone. I didn't even go up. Just pitched camp, maybe 50 feet from the base. The structure looked rough, rust on the rails, wood gone soft in places, but still standing. That night, I sat outside the tent, looking up at it. The top platform was barely visible in the fog. I stared for a long time. At one point, I could have sworn I saw movement up there, like someone pacing, but it might have been a trick of the light. I didn't go up. I didn't sleep much that night. There was no sound, not even insects, just wind, and the occasional soft knock of something brushing the tent wall. I kept waking up, thinking I'd heard boots on metal far away. It was probably the wind shifting the tower. That's what I told myself. In the morning, I made coffee, walked the perimeter. No tracks, no sign of animals. But near the base of the tower, I noticed something. The access hatch was open. Not wide, just cracked. I hadn't touched it. I looked up. The top platform was still lost in fog. I should have left. I didn't. Instead, I clipped my flashlight to my jacket, unlatched the holster on my hip out of instinct, and started up the stairs. They groaned under my weight. The steel was rusted, but not rotten. The air got colder with each level. My hand on the rail felt numb. The first 2 levels were empty. Just old storage crates, rusted cans, bird droppings. But when I reached the top, I stopped. There was a notebook sitting in the center of the platform floor. It was wrapped in a plastic freezer bag, like someone had placed it there recently. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Ben's. I opened it. Just a few pages were filled out. Most of them were sketches, crude maps, elevation notes. But the last page had writing. It's still watching. The sound isn't static. I hear my name at night. If anyone finds this, don't answer it. That's when I heard it again. The metal stairs creaking 1 level below. 1 step. Pause. Another. Closer. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I backed into the far corner of the platform, hand on my sidearm, flashlight ready. The sound stopped. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I stepped forward and looked down through the open trapdoor. Nothing. The stairs were empty. But at the base of the tower, barely visible through the fog, there was a second tent. Small, tan. I hadn't seen it before. It hadn't been there the night before. I climbed down. When I reached the bottom, the tent was gone. Just a circle in the dirt where it had been. And something else. A pair of footprints in the soft earth. 1 set, facing the tower, deep enough to be fresh. I packed up and left without eating. Didn't look back once. When I got back to my truck, there was mud on the driver's side door. A smear, like a gloved hand had pushed it shut after I left. I keep Ben's notebook locked in a drawer at home. Haven't opened it since. I don't know who or what was in that tower. But I know the looped breathing I hear at night isn't from memory. It's coming through the static, always at the same hour, always just outside the range. I don't answer anymore. I took a break from school after spring semester. No big story. I just couldn't do it anymore. The classes, the dorms, the pressure of being okay all the time. I spent most of April watching through-hike videos and reading gear reviews. It felt like something I could control, something real. I found Ridge Trail 17 by accident. Some old post on a backpacking forum mentioned it, said it was technically open, just not maintained. No water sources, no ranger patrol, and barely any signage. Perfect. I drove out on a Tuesday. The access road was rough, barely passable in my hatchback. No other cars at the trailhead. I packed light. Stove, hammock, mylar tarp, food for 3 days. It was cold for late spring. Some snow patches on the ground. Sky was clear. The hike up was steep, dead branches everywhere, like the forest had been shedding itself all winter. After a few hours, I didn't hear planes anymore, or birds, just wind. I like that. I set up camp near a rocky outcrop on the second night. Good view, good distance from the trail. I felt proud, even safe, like I'd done something right. That changed around dusk. I was boiling water when I noticed it. Off to the side, maybe 50 yards down a slope, someone had made a fire pit. Not old, maybe used within the last day. Charcoal still warm. Crushed beer can half buried in the ash. A torn corner of an energy bar wrapper I recognized. Same brand I'd packed. I called out. Just a quiet, hello? Nothing. I stayed still for a while. Listening? Nothing. Eventually, I moved my camp about 100 yards uphill, just in case. But I couldn't shake it. Why hadn't I seen them or heard them? Who camps that close to someone without saying anything? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every noise felt deliberate, every snap of a twig, every gust. At some point, I don't know when, I must have dozed off. But around 2:30 a.m., I sat up. I was sure I'd heard whispering. 2 voices, low, male, close. When I opened the tarp and looked out with my flashlight, there was nothing, just woods, empty. But I didn't sleep again. When the sky started to lighten, I packed up fast. My hands were shaking while I rolled the tarp. I kept checking the trees. Nothing moved, but I could feel it. Something had shifted in the woods overnight. I was about to leave when I noticed something sticking out of the ground just a few feet from the front of my setup. It was my trekking pole. I'd left it leaned against the hammock tree, but now it was standing straight up, jammed deep into the dirt. The handle pointed toward me, like someone had planted it there. I didn't touch it, just stared for a minute. I kept thinking, if they wanted to hurt me, they could have. They were close. They'd already been close. I started the hike back down without eating. No music, no water breaks. I just wanted out. The trail looked different somehow, like it had shifted overnight. At some point, I stopped to adjust my pack straps and heard a sound behind me. One footstep, just one. I spun around, nothing. Then a few minutes later, another sound, this time ahead of me. A short, sharp exhale. Not mine. That's when I realized something. The woods were still, too still. And every time I stopped, I heard movement, but only when I wasn't moving. By the last mile, I was almost running. I reached the trailhead around 11 a.m., covered in sweat and mud. My car was still there. Nothing looked touched. But when I got close, I saw them. Footprints, 2 clean sets, on the hood and windshield, like someone had stood up there, watching, waiting. I didn't check the inside. I didn't care. I threw my bag in the back and drove until I had signal. I never reported anything. What would I say? That someone followed me without showing themselves? That they left no trace except rearranging my things and walking on my car? I haven't been back on a trail since. I still look at maps sometimes. Still wonder if I'll try again. But whenever I park in a quiet place, I check the roof first, just in case someone's waiting to step down. I was 64 when I went back. I'd spent over 3 decades working for the Parks Department in Washington. Trail maintenance, storm damage, controlled burns. I wasn't special, just one of those quiet men who knew how to keep a place together without needing to talk much. After I retired, I stopped hiking. Didn't feel the need. Then my wife passed. Late stage ALS. That kind of slow goodbye changes you. I started walking again, mostly for routine, mostly to sleep through the night. In late February of 2023, I decided to revisit a stretch of the Olympic coast I hadn't touched in years. Locals call it Bone Trail. Not officially, of course. It's just part of the loop between Third Beach and Toe Leak Point. But old-timers knew the name. The stretch between miles 6 and 8, where we used to find deer carcasses, picked clean, sometimes arranged strange, never any prints nearby. People used to joke about trail art. I never found it funny. I set out early. Weather was typical, wet, quiet, low fog. I parked at the trailhead, signed a box, and didn't see another soul. February's like that. The mud was deep, but the woods were still, not peaceful, just watching. I got to the bone stretch by late afternoon. Didn't expect much, just wanted to walk it again. See if it felt the same. It didn't. Half a mile in, I found rope, tied low on a tree near the base. Not climbing rope, thinner, almost decorative, but with knots. Old habit kicked in. I squatted to check it and found a small circle of stones under the leaves, arranged like a ring. In the center, a tuft of animal fur, gray. I kept going. Farther in, someone had carved a symbol into a cedar trunk. 3 vertical lines crossed once in the middle. Could have been anything. A bored camper. But the bark was fresh, maybe 2 days old. I camped near the bluff, just off the trail. Same place I'd camped years before with patrol teams. It felt wrong now. Not dangerous, just off balance. Before I zipped up for the night, I checked around. That's when I saw it, hanging from a branch over my tent. A small figure made of twine and bone. The bone was real, maybe a bird's. I didn't sleep much. The wind picked up around 2 a.m. That's what woke me. The tarp flapping, the trees shifting. But there was something else. Under the wind. Heavier. Rhythmic. Footsteps, not boots, not hooves. Just the sound of something wet and slow. Pacing in the dark. Moving just far enough to be felt, not seen. Every few seconds a pause, then a breath. I stayed still in the tent. I didn't unzip it. I just listened. At one point, I swear I heard it lean against the canvas. A faint pressure. Then it pulled back. Nothing after that. Silence returned, but not calm. At first light, I stepped out. There were no prints around the tent, no torn fabric, just mud. But 10 feet away, sunk into the wet trail, was a bare footprint. Human, adult-sized. No tread marks, skin. And right in the middle of the heel, pressed in like a stamp, was the bone amulet from the tree. I packed up without eating. My knees were stiff. My hands shook when I rolled the sleeping mat. As I turned back onto the trail, I caught movement just behind me. I spun. Nothing. Just fog, branches, and trees that hadn't shifted a minute earlier. I hiked hard, retracing my steps. But the trail felt different, like it stretched longer, like the turns weren't where they had been. Then came the whistling, faint, just 5 notes. Over and over. I froze. It was the exact signal Ben, my old patrol partner, used back in 1997. We had codes. That one meant check in, no contact. But Ben had a stroke 3 years ago. Couldn't walk, could barely speak. The whistling came again, closer, same 5 notes. I started moving faster. No brakes, no water, just forward. When I reached the last curve before the forest exit, I saw something that stopped me cold. 2 campsites, one empty, flattened, the other fresh, still warm. And in the second one, someone had used my old aluminum tent stakes. Same brand, same model. One of them even had the little red tape I'd tied around it back in 2006 when I lost it during a storm patrol. I didn't touch anything, just kept walking. Back at the truck, everything was the way I left it. No scratches, no signs. Except one thing. The same 5-note whistle from deep in the trees behind me, right as I turned the ignition. I haven't gone back to Bone Trail since, but sometimes, on cold nights, I catch myself whistling those same 5 notes without realizing it. And then I stop and listen. I grew up in northern Arizona, just outside Payson. A lot of dry forest, low pines, red dust. Not much to do but walk. My dad was the outdoors type, tracker, ex-Army. Used to say the forest could keep secrets better than people could. He died 2 years before all this hard thing. Quiet. After he passed, I started hiking alone, not to clear my head, just to feel somewhere else. I knew the local trails, but Dry Hollow was different. A deep wash south of our property line, maybe 5 miles out. Not on any official map. People talked about it, mostly ranchers, always quiet when they did. No one ever said it was haunted or cursed, just not safe. One morning in late May, I decided to go. It was already hot by 9 a.m. I packed light, water, knife, flashlight, some dried food, old compass of my dad's. I didn't tell anyone, no one to tell. The land dropped off fast once I got close. Barely a trail, loose rock, animal prints. Dry Hollow opened up slow, more like a crack in the earth than a real canyon. Pine trees leaned over it like they didn't want to be seen. The silence hit me first. No birds, no bugs, just the wind in short bursts. About 2 miles in, I found the fire ring, rocks set tight, charcoal still dark, a spoon on the ground, old, metal, bent, and something else, a circle of glass bottles, all clear, all turned upside down, necks buried in the dirt. That didn't make sense. No animal would do that. I stood there a while trying to decide whether to turn back, but I didn't. Stupid maybe, but part of me felt like someone had already seen me, and not doing anything might be worse. I kept walking. I didn't see anyone, but I knew I wasn't alone. A mile past the bottle ring, I found prints. Human, barefoot, deep heel, narrow toe, widespread, like someone used to walking without shoes. They cut across the trail, then doubled back. I followed them maybe 20 yards before they vanished into hard rock. No other prints, no drag marks, just gone. I kept walking. The hollow narrowed. The heat felt heavier, and the trees grew sparse, just rock and dirt now. Then I saw something that stopped me cold. A pit, maybe 3 feet deep, covered in dead brush. Someone had tried to hide it, but the cover had partially collapsed. Inside were sharp sticks, broken branches, all pointed up. It wasn't for animals, it wasn't natural, and it was fresh. My hands were sweating. I turned around and started back, but the trail didn't look right. Branches were snapped where I didn't remember. A pile of stones I hadn't seen before was now on the side. Neat, flat, deliberate. I picked up the pace. And about half a mile later, I found my compass, sitting on a flat rock, clean. I hadn't dropped it. It had been in my jacket pocket, zipped. Now it was placed, facing north. That's when I realized I hadn't heard anything behind me, not birds, not wind, but I felt it, that shift in the air when someone's just out of sight, not moving, waiting. I didn't run, I knew better. I just kept walking, calm, steady. Then close, maybe 10 feet behind me, I heard a footstep, just one. Crunch of loose grit under weight. I stopped, held my breath. Nothing. I started moving again, faster. When I reached the ridge near the entry point, the wind picked up. I turned once just to look. Someone was crouched on the far ledge where the hollow bends, too far to see their face. Just a dark figure, still watching. I made it to my property line by sundown. Didn't sleep that night. Kept waiting for the sound of dirt under a barefoot step. 3 days later, I found teeth in the mailbox. Small, human-looking, too clean. No note. I don't go near Dry Hollow anymore, but sometimes I catch myself turning off the lights early just in case whoever was down there remembers me. I was assigned to the burn zone in late September. The Park Service had been rotating contractors to monitor post-fire regrowth in the southern portion of the old Umpqua Ridge section, southeast Oregon. My job was to document plant resilience, photograph erosion, and take soil samples. It was supposed to be routine. The place had burned nearly a year before, not a full crown fire or mostly ground scorch, but enough to leave everything looking half dead. Charcoal black trees leaning like broken poles, soil dry and cracked, air still carrying that faint acidic ash smell. Beautiful in its own way, but not a place you want to camp in for long. I had 3 days out there. I chose to base myself near the top of the old Firewatch Road. It wasn't on any of the current maps, but I'd found it on satellite. It led to an old tower that hadn't been used in over a decade. One of the rangers back at HQ said it had burned halfway but was still standing. Just a pile of stairs and rust, he called it. But it was flat ground, elevated, and I liked being where I could see the horizon. The hike in was quiet, too quiet. No birds, just dry wind and the crunch of ash under my boots. I reached the clearing near the tower around 3 p.m. The tower stood like a skeleton, metal frame intact, wood partially collapsed, burned stairs leading up to nowhere. I pitched my tent a good distance from the base, scanned the area, no signs of anyone, no prints, no wrappers, nothing. That night, the wind died completely. I could hear every shift of fabric, every pop in the wood. Then, maybe around 2 a.m., I heard movement on the old fire road. Slow, dragging steps. Then the distinct sound of metal shifting against metal, like someone grabbing the railing of the tower. I didn't leave the tent. In the morning, I found nothing disturbed. But halfway up the burned staircase, someone had cut a single sprig of pine and laid it flat across the 3rd step. Fresh. I stayed one more night. I shouldn't have. The 2nd day was uneventful. I collected samples, marked GPS points, logged flora regrowth percentages, the usual. But I kept thinking about the pine sprig. There were no healthy pines left anywhere near the tower. Whoever left it brought it from outside. Just after dinner, I checked my coordinates. My GPS unit had reset, all previous waypoints gone. I figured it was a glitch. But when I started relogging the area, I noticed something strange. There were 2 pins on the same location, same timestamp, same elevation, one labeled Autosave 004, the other SR2. I hadn't named anything yet. That night, the wind never came back. The forest was dead quiet. I tried to sleep. Sometime after 1 a.m., I heard it again. Steps, slow, deliberate, crunch of ash under weight, something moving up the old Firewatch stairs. Then came a sound that turned my blood cold, a switch flipping, and then, just for a second, light. From the tower's top platform, it flickered once, dimensois yellowish, then went out. The tower hasn't had power in over 10 years. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I climbed the tower. Half the steps were gone, so I had to be careful. At the top, where the floor had partially collapsed, I found a small metal tin, like the kind used to hold matches. Inside was a photo, water damaged but still visible. A woman in hiking gear smiling next to the same tower. On the back, written in faded black ink, September 2009, SR, my initials. Same jacket, same face. But I was 22 in 2009, and I'd never been to this part of Oregon before. I left that morning, didn't finish the data set. 2 days later, back at home, my GPS unit updated with new pins. All of them marked with the same name. You already logged this. I haven't taken another solo contract since. My name's Daniel, 42. I used to work full-time in Glacier National Park, Montana, but I'm not technically on staff anymore, not after what happened 2 years ago. They call me seasonal now. Temporary relief, interim assignment, that kind of thing. I'm still uniformed, still carry the patch, but I don't sign paperwork. I don't do school tours. They send me where it's quiet, where no one else wants to go. This fall, that meant Michigan. I was asked to cover the tail end of the off-season at a small unit in Hiawatha National Forest, Upper Peninsula, remote enough that you pass more deer than people on the way in. One gravel access road, no cell reception, the kind of post where you mostly keep an eye on fire risks and lock up the last few trailheads before the snow. 'Twasn't a punishment exactly, they didn't say that, but nobody sent flowers either. I arrived on a Monday. Gray sky, damp ground, leaves turned into mush underfoot. There was a tension in the trees, not spooky, just tired, like the woods were holding their breath for the first snow. The ranger station was a prefab structure built in the 80s. One room, wood stove, fold-out cot. It had a radio console and a small gear shed out back. The door stuck when I opened it. The inside smelled like rust and paper. That first night, I lit a fire, ate from a can, and sat with the radio open on Channel 6. No traffic, no storms, just static. I slept light, with my boots next to the cot and a flashlight in my hand, old habit. Next morning, I started the loop. 3 trails needed closure signs. One small campsite had to be checked. Easy work. The last trail, Old Hollow, was the furthest out. 6 miles one way, dead-end spur. Ends at a ridge with a lookout platform built decades ago, supposed to be out of service. But the logbook said someone signed in 2 weeks ago. No sign out recorded. I loaded my day pack and started walking. The trail to Old Hollow wasn't marked anymore, but I remembered it from the binder back at the station. One of the rangers in '97 called it the loneliest path in Michigan. I didn't think much of that at the time. The trees were thinner along the route. Lots of bare trunks, bark slashed off from wind and age. The trail was soft with rotting leaves, barely visible in some parts. Around mile 3, I stopped to tie my boot and noticed something. Wood chips? Fresh. Not from the wind. Too clean. Something had been chopped nearby. A few steps further, I found a stump. Cedar, recently split. Axe marks. The kind of cut that comes from habit, not necessity. Whoever did it wasn't building anything, just passing time. There were no boot prints, but the moss was disturbed in a way I recognized. Pressure from weight, not wind. I didn't call it in. Didn't want to make something out of nothing. By the time I reached the ridge, the light was already shifting. The lookout platform stood like a fossil. Half-broken railing, scorched floor, but still there. The view was just trees, miles of them, no sound. Then I saw it. At the base of the lookout steps, a single set of boot prints, not deep, dry soil. They went up. But there were no prints coming down. I climbed the stairs slow. My hand never left a sidearm. The platform was empty, but in the far corner, tucked under a loose board, I found something that stopped me cold. A Park Service radio, identical to mine, still functional, battery pack warm. I turned it over, no name, but the channel wheel was taped into place, stuck on 6. My channel. I checked the antenna, scratched, and carved into the wooden railing, almost missed, were 4 words. Don't stay past dark. I made it back to the station just after dark. I didn't run, I didn't panic, but I didn't look back either. I locked the door, secured the shutters, put the spare battery into my radio, and checked the logs. Nothing had come through all day. Channel 6 was quiet, except now it wasn't. At 10:14 p.m., the radio clicked, then static. No voice, just a rhythm. 4 seconds of silence, then a burst, then silence again, like someone keying the mic and holding it down. It repeated, not fast, not random, like breathing. I logged the transmission manually, labeled it Unidentified 6A. At 11:03, I stepped outside with the flashlight. Walked the perimeter. Nothing until I checked the gear shed. One of the binoculars was missing. The case was unzipped, neatly, not dropped, not stolen. I found it 10 minutes later, hanging on the outside of the station window, suspended by its strap. The lenses were pointed inward toward my cot. Whoever did it wasn't trying to scare me. They wanted me to know I was being watched. I brought it inside and locked the door again. I didn't sleep. At 2:37 a.m., the radio buzzed again. No static this time. Just one sound. A door opening, wooden, slow, then nothing. At first light, I packed everything. Didn't eat, didn't write a report. Just zipped the sleeping bag, turned off the radio, and left the tower as it was. I didn't even log the missing binoculars. I wanted distance more than answers. The gravel road back out had always been rough, but now it was blocked. A pine trunk across both lanes. No storm the night before, no wind strong enough to drop a tree that size. Someone put it there. I cut through a bypass I'd noticed on the way in. It added time, but I didn't care. The forest felt tilted, like it had been shifted slightly while I slept. Some paths looked different. Some felt too familiar. Around mile 2, my truck's key fob stopped working. Battery was fresh. Light still blinked. Just no response. I unlocked manually. Inside, everything was how I left it, except for one thing. The rear bench was carved. 4 words, deep, deliberate. You stayed too long. Same phrasing as the railing at Old Hollow. Same rhythm. I left. Drove the whole way without stopping. Didn't call it in. Didn't file a report. Didn't tell the station chief when I handed the keys back. That night, I didn't sleep. I turned the radio on again. Not the work one, the old one I'd kept from Montana. Channel 6 was quiet until 2:37 a.m. Then came the same sound again. A door opening. Wooden. Slow. They offered me another off-season contract last week. Different park. Same deal. I said no. Some places aren't haunted. They're just waiting. And if you stay too long, they remember you. We parked at the edge of the service road just before noon. The gravel was soft from last night's rain, and the trees were starting to lose their color. Marissa was already lacing up her boots when I killed the engine. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. We both knew this trip wasn't about talking. Not yet. I opened the trunk, handed her the heavier pack. She didn't thank me. Trailhead 29 should be straight past the closed sign, I said, about 6 miles in. She nodded, pulled the straps tight. Still nothing. We'd been together 11 years, married for 8. It used to be easy until it wasn't. Things broke slowly, like frost damage. Cracks you don't see until they're everywhere. 3 months ago, she found the messages. I moved out for a while, therapy, space. Then she asked if I wanted to try this trip. Something real, she said. Physical. Simple, I didn't say no. The trail was overgrown but walkable. Wet leaves, slippery moss on stone, no markers after the first mile. We moved in silence, pausing sometimes to adjust straps or drink. Once or twice, I caught her looking at me like she was trying to remember something or forget. At mile 4, we found a torn energy gel packet, still sticky, not ours. Marissa picked it up with a leaf, turned it over, no markings. She dropped it in the side pocket of a pack without a word. Someone else out here? I asked. She just shrugged. Could have been weeks ago. But the trail was too clean for that. At mile 6, we reached the clearing. A small wooden shelter stood just past a collapsed marker. No door, just a roof, walls, and a bench bolted to the back. Inside, a plastic case with a waterproof logbook, the kind where hikers leave notes. Marissa opened it, flipped through. There was only one fresh entry, written in sharp, tight handwriting. No name. One of you brought it with you? She didn't react, just handed it to me. I read it twice, looked around. The forest was silent, not quiet. Silent. Even the wind had stopped. Marissa sat on the bench and started pulling food from her bag like nothing happened. I didn't ask what it meant, and she didn't ask who they meant. That night, we made camp a little down from the shelter. Ground was dry. Cold crept in quick once the light was gone. We didn't talk much over dinner, just the sound of foil tearing, water heating. I caught her staring into the trees a few times, like she expected to see something between them. Before we turned in, I asked, "You want the knife?" She shook her head. "Keep it." We zipped the tent shut and lay side by side, not touching. There was space between us, physical and otherwise. Around 2 a.m., I woke up. No noise, just that feeling, the one you get right before something happens. A kind of weight in the chest. Then I heard it. Not far, maybe 10 feet from the tent. Voices. 2, whispering. I froze. At first I thought, another couple, camped nearby? But the words, they sounded too familiar. We can't keep pretending like it didn't happen. Then stop pretending. Marissa had said that earlier that day, almost exactly like that. I sat up, held my breath. The whispering continued, not quite mocking, more like echoing, like the forest was playing it back. Marissa was already awake. I could feel it in her breathing, shallow, focused. She whispered, "You hear that?" I nodded. "Don't go out," she said. I didn't. The whisper stopped 5 minutes later. In the morning, we found footprints near the fire ring, one set, light, no treads. They circled the tent and stopped at the exact spot where I'd heard the voices. Nothing was missing, but the pot had been moved, placed carefully on top of a flat rock, like someone wanted it displayed. Marissa just stared at it for a long time before saying, "We should pack up." I agreed. We folded the tent in silence. Didn't say anything about the footprints. Didn't say anything at all. By the time we hit the trail again, the weather had shifted. Low clouds, flat light. the kind that makes everything look the same. We walked faster. Neither of us said it, but we both wanted out. An hour in, we passed a marker we didn't recognize. A flat stone with a faded red X painted on one side. Marissa stopped. "That wasn't here yesterday," she said. I agreed, but we didn't talk about what that meant. We moved on, but the trail felt wrong, like it had rearranged itself. Turns where there shouldn't be, roots where there hadn't been, and no birds, not since morning. Then we saw it, the logbook, hanging from a tree branch in a Ziploc bag 20 feet off the trail. It was the same one we'd signed at the shelter. Same green cover, same broken binding. Marissa climbed up and brought it down. Inside, the first page was an exact copy of our entry, but the next few were different, new, written in handwriting like mine, but not mine. He keeps lying. She still hates him. They're pretending to fix something that's already gone. Then last page, one of them needs to leave. Marissa didn't speak. She just handed it to me and walked up the trail. I followed. We didn't talk the rest of the day. Around mile 5, the trail split. Same spot we'd come through before, but now it forked. There was no fork yesterday, no markers, no signs. Marissa took the left path. I hesitated, looked at the other. She stopped and turned. "What are you doing?" I looked back at her, and for a second, just a second, I wasn't sure it was her. Not exactly. Same face, same voice, but different. I stepped forward anyway. The fog came fast, thick, wet, and quiet, the kind that eats sound. Within minutes, visibility dropped to a few feet. Everything ahead blurred into white. Marissa was walking ahead of me, fast and deliberate. I tried to keep pace, but the trail stretched strangely. The space between us grew. "I think we've been here before," I said. She stopped, turned slightly. "You want to go back?" It wasn't a question about direction. I didn't answer right away. "No," I said finally. She nodded, barely, and kept going. Her silhouette disappeared into the mist. Somewhere behind us I heard my name, Jared. It wasn't her voice. It was too clean, too perfect, like a playback. I turned, heart jumping, nothing there, just pale trees and silence. When I looked forward again, Marissa was gone. I ran. I called her name over and over. No answer, just mist and leaves. Eventually, I found her bandana tied around a low branch. Then further down the trail, I found the map, folded neatly on a dry stone, torn clean in an X. After that, the trail just kept going. I made it back to the car near sundown. When I opened the door, everything was as we'd left it, except for one thing: the trail register logbook, dry, intact, sitting on the passenger seat. First page, our entry. Last page, a single line in that same sharp handwriting. "One of you stayed." They never found her. Search parties ran for days. No signs, no footprints, no gear. Just a forest that didn't give back. I told them we were together the whole time. I never mentioned the voices, or the other version of the logbook, or how she looked at me right before she disappeared, like she'd already made a choice. Sometimes I wonder if she did. Sometimes I think she's still out there, and sometimes just before I fall asleep, I hear my own voice whisper back. If you made it this far, then some part of you knows. Not all trails end when the path runs out. And for that, thank you for listening all the way through. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps this project grow and keeps the stories coming. And now, I want to hear from you. Which story hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. The woods may forget your footsteps, but those who listen never forget the sound. I'll see you in the next episode.